Hello guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be checking out the new PCG Biome Core Plugin, which is a brand new multi-biome PCG plugin. The PCG Biome Core Plugin is a data-driven biome generator built entirely using the PCG Framework. The Biome Core Plugin shows you how you can generate multiple unique biomes for a massive open-world environment while still maintaining artistic hand control. The PCG Biome Core generates different biome foliage based on the provided landscape and data sets. Currently, it features 5 different biomes. So we have a broadleaf forest biome that populates most of the map. We have a carnivorous forest biome. We also have this little desert biome, so you can see a little cactus here. Then a landslide biome, so you can see there's lots of different rocks on the side of the mountain. And then finally a mountain forest biome, so these pine trees that are all spawned at the peaks of the mountains. And of course, these are just the few of the examples included. So you could go in and create your own custom biomes if you wanted to add more. Now, the hand controls that this Biome Core plugin includes are the ability to modify or spawn in a biome or forest based on a spline. So you could manually add in or create a forest wherever you'd like. And this is implemented in the plugin to show you how you would use it for adding even extra details like a field of crops. It also includes things like a spline path that you can use to cut a pathway through the forest if you want sort of an area that your player can walk through. There are many different foliage types that it comes included with, like rocks, trees, and bushes, and you can use this PCG Graph as the base for creating and adding your own new biomes, or you can do things like swap out these simple placement meshes for things like realistic nanite foliage. This is an incredible tool as it even showcases a lot of the new features coming to PCG in 5.4, things like recursive subgraphs, dynamic attribute tracking, and a handful of the brand new nodes. Now, if you guys are interested in PCG, in my multiplayer survival game course, we cover over the basics of PCG, and we even create things like our own multi-biome PCG graph that spawns in different biomes and foliage based on our landscape material. So if you guys are interested, check out my multiplayer survival game course. I'll actually be remastering the course in Unreal Engine 5.4 soon, so stay tuned for that. Head over to smartpoly.teachable.com and check it out, or visit the link in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's get right into the video. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do to try out the new PCG Biome Core plugin is you need to first make sure that you have Unreal Engine 5.4 downloaded and installed. So currently I'm using Unreal Engine 5.4 Preview 1. So this is sort of like the beta version of 5.4. Then you want to create a brand new project, and then you want to go to the plugins. So go to Edit and Plugins. And in here, we want to search for PCG. And you're going to see these 2 new plugins pop up. So we have the PCG Biome Core, and then we also have the PCG Biome Sample. So you want to go ahead and make sure that you enable both of these plugins. Basically, the Biome Core is the biome tools and the generator, and the PCG Biome Sample is the sample map and all the sample assets that are included. So go ahead and enable both those plugins and restart your project. Now, once you've restarted your project, I'm going to show you guys where you can find the PCG Biome Core assets, because by default, it's not going to be inside of your project folder. So first up, you want to open up your content browser, and you want to make sure that you can see this engine folder. If you don't see this engine folder, that means that we need to go ahead and show the engine assets. So under this little gear icon, you want to click on settings. You want to make sure that you have show engine content and also show plugin content. You want to hit the checkbox for both of those. So now we should be able to see the engine folder. And in the engine folder, we have this plugins folder. So double click and open that up. And these are all the assets for all the different plugins inside of the engine. In our case, we want to look for the PCG Biome Core folder. If you scroll all the way down, we should have PCG Biome Core content and PCG Biome Sample content. So if you open up either one of these, you can also search for PCG in the plugins. But if you open up the folder, you can see that we currently have 2 different folders. We have one for the PCG Biome Core content, and then we have the sample content. So I'm going to explain really quickly the differences between both of these folders. Basically, the core content comes with the Biome Core generator. So this is the main PCG graph, and all of the things like filters, the setups, the blueprints, and all of the subgraphs. In the sample content, this basically comes with the map, so the demo map that showcases this graph. It also comes with all of the meshes, so all of these stylized simple meshes, geometry, and all of the setup for the demo. So let's go ahead and check out the sample content. So first things first, we want to go to the maps folder and open up this biome sample level. And so this is basically the sample level that showcases the different biomes that you can create using the Biome Core plugin. So first things first, let's go ahead and showcase all the different biomes in this level. So down here, you'll see that we have things like a desert biome. So there are spawning in cactus here. We have sort of these dead grass spawning around it. And then we also have things like these rock clusters that spawns in the desert biome. We also have these different forests. I'll get into these here in a second, but let's just cover the different biomes that we have. So we have the desert biome, and over here we have sort of this forest biome. And in the forest biome, we have things like little bushes that spawn in here, some smaller trees throughout the different forest. And then what you'll notice is on these mountains that are sort of color-coded in white, we have trees, as well as some different rocks that will spawn in between the trees. But mainly over the mountains, we have these pine trees that are spawning on the peaks of these mountains. We also have a different biome, which is called the landslide biome, which basically showcases all of these different rocks that are sort of just spawned on the side of the mountain. Now, this is sort of an interesting thing that they included because me as a game developer, I would use this to maybe spawn in some sort of rich metal nodes area. So if you were creating things like a survival game, the player could come to this area to harvest maybe certain iron ores or metal ores. So you could add in sort of a rich resource heavy area. And then over here, something very interesting that I want to show you guys is the fact that you can even add in hand placed or certain custom defined areas in your biome. So in this case, they've added in this crops field. So you can see that it is spawning in these different rows of crops in these straight rows on the landscape. And this sort of cuts out a chunk of our forest and spawns in this area for crops. So it's very interesting that they included this because it shows you that you can still have the hand control that you need over something that is procedurally generated on your map. And this is even a spline. So if I select certain parts of the spline, I can move this around. And if I wanted my crop area to be a little bit larger, you can see that it removes part of the forest and spawns in those rows of crops wherever I want to modify and add that in. Okay, so this is just a neat example that they included that because, again, it is allowing you to not only procedurally generate large open worlds and populate it with foliage, but still maintain that artistic hand control that you need to add in certain elements to your world. Now, a couple of other different manual controls that you get in this PCG graph is this spline spawned in forest. So this forest is generated using this spline. So again, this is some more manual controls that you get. So say I wanted a forest randomly in the middle of this desert. I could spawn in this forest using the spline, and I can modify things like the spline points. Now we'll go ahead and generate the forest around it. If I wanted this to be a little bit smaller, I can go ahead and move things like the spline points in, and you can see that it reduces the size of this forest that we have spawned in. Okay, so again, this is just more about adding manual controls that you might need based on the needs of your project. And again, this is another example of spawning in a forest. In this case, it's using just a square volume box to spawn in a forest, whereas this one was using a spline that you can add in using the curves, and it gives you a little bit more control than just a volume. Now over here, we also have another manual control, which is this spline path. So if we go ahead and select this spline path, you can see that this cuts a pathway through the forest. So if we take one of these spline points and use Alt to drag it, that will go ahead and cut a pathway through our forest. So if we wanted to add a pathway that our player can walk through, or say you wanted to remove certain foliage, like these larger trees in a certain area, you could use something like this spline path that basically just cuts a pathway through the trees being spawned in this forest. Okay, so that is the Biome Core plugin. Let's actually take a look underneath the hood. So if you go to the content drawer in the biome sample content, what you're going to notice is the biome definitions folder. So if you go in here, these are the different data assets that define the different biomes in our biome sample level. So in our case, we have things like the broadleaf forest, the coniferous forest, the desert, the landslide, and the mountain forest. If you open up any of these definitions, basically this is just a simple data asset that has things like a name and a color defining the different biomes. So you could go in and add another custom biome in here, but there's also different biome assets. So if we go to the Biome Assets folder, if we open something like the desert biome, So if we open up that data asset, this will show you exactly what assets are used in the biome generator. So this is how you'd add your own custom assets to that specific biome that you assign. So in our case, in this biome assets, we have an array. So we have index 0. So if you expand that, it'll show you exactly how this is designed. So you can see here we have things like a generator. So you can specify the specific PCG generator that you want to use for this particular asset. In our case, we're using this mesh PCG cactus, and we're using this shared trees generator for generating where we want these cactuses spawned in. If we expand the other indexes, you can see we have things like boulders. Again, we have another different type of cactus mesh. Now, another thing you might notice is this big boulder asset has also this child assets. So these are things like the small boulders that we saw spawned around the larger boulders, as well as things like these dead grass clusters around the cactus. That is using these child data assets. And so this is sort of like a sub generator that generates those smaller assets along the sides of these larger ones. Okay. Now you can go in and dig into all these other different biome assets like the broadleaf forest. And again, it's going to show you the array of all the different meshes in that biome. So again, you can do things like specify what type of generator you want for that specific mesh. And this is a very modular and advanced way that Epic designed this. And it's very flexible and data driven. So you can specify exactly what type of generator you want to use for which specific mesh. You can even add sub generators for smaller assets that you want to spawn around it. Now, one thing to note that this is not even a framework class. This is just a data asset. So if you look at the parent class, we have things like the biome sample asset. So if you wanted to expand on this framework and add in your own custom variables or assets, this is all implemented using just data assets, blueprints, and PCG. So this is all done in Blueprint, and you can completely customize it and build upon this framework. Now, if we actually look and dive into the graph itself, if you go to the PCG Biome Core content, this will actually show us the Biome Core PCG graph. So if we double click and open this up, this will pull up the actual PCG graph. And what you're going to notice right off the bat is that there aren't a whole ton of nodes on this graph itself. And that's because they are using a lot of the new features introduced into PCG in Unreal Engine 5.4, things like subgraphs and a lot of the new nodes that are introduced. So for example, it doesn't have all of the nodes for generating specific biomes. For those, if you go into the biome generators, you're going to notice that we have graphs. So there's these different subgraphs, and these are, again, brand new features introduced in 5.4, which allow you to sort of nest sub PCG graphs into a main graph. That way you can allow for more modular control. And also this allows for reusing this in multiple other different PCG graphs as well. So you'll notice that they also have things like filters. So they have graphs for filtering certain things out. Another thing you'll notice are the blueprints. So these are the different blueprints that we saw for adding things like a spline path. We also have things like a exclusion volume. So if you wanted to exclude certain areas in your level. In our case, we are excluding things like spawning in foliage at our water bodies or these lakes. If I hide this plane, you can see that it doesn't spawn any foliage or trees or any rocks wherever we have these water bodies located. And again, that just has to do with the way that they have the PCG graph to exclude certain areas in your world. Now, this is just a brief overview of the Biome Core plugin. Again, this is a very data-driven and modular plugin. And it's very advanced in the way that they set this up because it allows you to add in a specific generator per whatever asset that you want to add in your biome. Now that is pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to showcase the PCG Biome Core plugin that is new in Unreal Engine 5.4. There's obviously still a lot more to break down from this plugin, like how you would go in and add your own custom biome, or even doing things like swapping out some of the assets. But as you can see, it's a very complex and a data-driven tool that showcases a lot of the new features and nodes coming to PCG in Unreal Engine 5.4. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below about this biome generator. Is this something that you'll be interested in using in your own projects? Let me know down in the comments down below. Also, check out my multiplayer survival game course on smartpoly.teachable.com. Again, I will be remastering the course in Unreal Engine 5.4, so stay tuned for that. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.